Hello, everybody. It's Friday. And guess what?
Go on.
There's two of me.
My problem is, which one do I look at?
Well,
which angle do you prefer?
That's really easy.
Okay, you just get rid of the other one.
I'm going to get rid of the other one because that's just too confusing for everybody, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
Right. Too confusing. So yeah, we won't have Graham number 2. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wow Ergonomics. It's Friday. It's midday. It's your favourite time of the week. It's the time when Stephen and I take over your airways and your stop your breathing.
Yeah, I was going to say it's airways.
Airwaves. And normally get joined by a guest who today is the wonderful Marianne Mills, who does another podcast with me. But hello, Marianne.
Hello.
You can tell that I'm in one of those moods because it's the summer holidays. Can we talk about that for a minute? Have you got children at home now?
Talk about it for more than a minute. I think we could probably fill about 3 shows with it. So yes, I do. It's a bit of a balance, isn't it, really? It's trying to work at home with more people in the house. But the plus side is there's no hassle from school. So it's a bit yin and yang, isn't it? You know, what you gain with one hand, you lose with the other, or whatever the phrase would be. So
yeah, I like that. On the one hand, you don't get no hassle with school. So let's just break this down. A few things here. One is you gain a bit of extra time if you're involved in the school run, as it were. So you don't have to get the children to school in the morning. You don't have to pick them up in the afternoon, right? Brucey bonus. The second thing of that is you don't have the hassle of dealing with schools who don't understand people that work. For anybody that works in the school, I'm sure you're trying your best, but a little bit of a rant here. Sometimes people that organise things around schools do not have a clue about people that work, and especially people, I'd say, who perhaps work for themselves as well. You might assume that people that work for themselves can decide whenever they do things, but normally we have a very full calendar during the day of things that we've organised around our work, and then suddenly you throw in things like, it would be really nice tomorrow if we open up the classroom and you can come and see your children's artwork that they've been doing all year. Yeah. Great, but I have a meeting at that time. Could you give me a bit of warning? I have to say, and this is particular sort of rant at our school. Get this. I hope they're not watching.
Go on then.
They sent out a questionnaire and an email actually first saying that they were considering changing the school uniform for next term. Okay. Right? Yeah. Literally about a week before the end of term. Right? Literally. Right? And then they sent out the questionnaire, and obviously because lots of parents like ourselves filled in the questionnaire and went, sorry, but couldn't you have said this sooner? Two things. One was they were saying that they wanted to change the school uniform from a smart school uniform into things like joggers and whatever, so that children can just kind of roll between activities without having to get changed. Right.
So they're not having, the idea being they're not having a separate sports kit, potentially something less to carry, something less to lose, maybe something else less to buy.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
I complained on 2 fronts, right? And I don't care if anyone wants to take me up on this. One, I actually quite like my children to look quite smart for school. Because I think that's actually quite a good principle, because they look unsmart the rest of the time. 2, it's a bit like if I go out somewhere, you know, I'll actually bother to put a shirt and stuff on. I don't during the day. That's, you know, when I'm working from home, because I'm at home. Secondly, this thing about don't have to get changed. I pointed out to school, actually, for a lot of children, learning to get changed is a life skill. It's really important that they can do that, right? And it isn't that difficult, but actually, unless you practice it, and some of those children might not have parents at home who will be bothered to teach them the ways of getting changed and whatever. So you're denying them. I said you're denying them a life skill, which I thought was accurate and right. Anyway,
the jump to secondary school then becomes
massive.
I was talking to a secondary school teacher, somebody I think that maybe had gone from primary to secondary, and was just saying that jump is absolutely massive. The expectation's massive. And for the kids, when you think they've gone from 1 month to the next, my birthday's in August and it's soon. And if you think 1 minute I would have been 3 and the next minute I was at school at 4. But what they actually did then was they kept some of us in a separate class that were younger, which didn't really help because it kind of meant that I was always sort of behind the others, really, despite the fact that we were in the same class. Well, at some point in time, you're going to be anyway. So, yeah, I think all this sort of, in a way, namby-pambying around isn't always necessarily particularly helpful, really, even just in terms of kids having to make decisions about things, that like problem solving. I say to my kids, I can't do that. And I go, sorry? I can't do that. And I'm like, I've no idea what you're saying to me now, because I'm pretty sure if you were like at school and you were faced with a problem, your teacher would get you to do it. But I wonder if the whole system, just society now, makes it easier. That honestly, my son said that he couldn't find something the other day, and he said, obviously I can't do it because I can't find it. And I went, nah, sorry, that's not an option. I said, what do you mean? And I said, it's not an option. I said, that just isn't an option. I said, opting out of something because you can't find it when you've given it a man look isn't good enough.
It's interesting.
They do admit they give man looks as well.
Yeah, I always find with these things it's really interesting because when you tell us and we sort of get on board with it, I always think that's really interesting that that's the assumption we've come to. But I always like to flip it round. What was their rationale, Graham? What was their thinking? Why did they think it was such a good idea? What was the whole sort of premise behind it? Because
the only thing that they gave as a premise was that they felt that it would be good for the children in terms of being able to easily transition between activities, right?
I think,
and I kind of saw the negative of that, which is actually children need to be able to get as Marianne said, when you then transition up into the upper school, you're going to have to get changed for activities. So if you take away that skill now, they're not practicing that skill now. They're not getting into that headspace of actually, before we go and do PE or we go and do something where, we're going to get dirty or sweat or whatever else, we get changed into different sets of clothes. And actually, even from a hygiene point of view, it's better have dirty clothes. If you're going to run around a pitch for an hour or whatever, especially in the heat that we're about to have or we've had lately, you're going to sweat. Even the youngsters, they sweat.
I think a lot of the issue is that you take it right back to nursery, let's just say. Everybody's trying to save time. This is my professional opinion.
Okay.
And I see it everywhere. Everybody's trying to save time. So it feels like all the time, whenever I've looked at schools, if you look back and back, the problems that you have. So even when people are leaving school, they can't do things. And then when you track it back, parents, many of them in a hurry, but I equally think there are many that don't bother because they know that somebody will pick up the pieces. Kids go to school not being toilet trained. There'll be some that there's legitimate reasons, but I think there's others that people can't be bothered. But I also think there's not help for that and people don't know what to do. That then problem, but you even take it into the workplace. People are constantly trying to find quick fixes for things instead of going right back to the beginning and going, right, okay, where does the problem actually start?
Because I think you're getting good at this, because that's normally my job to do the segue into the workplace, but you've just done it for me, because that's where I was going to go. Yeah, wasn't that good? Yeah.
I've been around you too long.
But isn't this true? I mean, are we not seeing kind of an elevation of this into the workplace as well? Are we not getting, if we continue these kind of behaviours, right? Do we not end up with a workforce that's like that? As you say, it's no good to anybody having some member of staff where they go like, well, yeah, but I don't know how to do that. Yeah, I mean, yes, people need training. We'll talk about that in a minute. See what I did. Yes, people need training. Yes, people need education in order to know how to do things and do things properly. But you do also need people to be in a headspace where they're thinking, I can work out a way of doing this, and then maybe I just need to find out how to do it better. What you don't want are people that come into a workspace going, yeah, but I don't know how to do it.
I think a lot of that comes with standards as well. I think that because of this whole live and let live. I don't know, because I don't really want to sit on the fence with that at all. I was training someone a while ago, and I was saying that I really, really struggle with. I've forgotten her name now. Oh, I don't know. She's got red hair. She does documentaries, and she's got a London accent, and she's fairly young.
Oh,
it's Stacey Dooley.
Stacey Dooley.
Stacey, yeah.
She's brilliant, but I just really struggle with her, like when she's dropping letters, and then because I had a conversation with a guy that I was teaching, and he had been a presenter as well. That's what he does, and then we were talking about, like, should we not give people the right to talk how they want to? And then I think, yeah, but the funny thing is, my children will text me things. I mean, yesterday I was having a conversation with my eldest, who's 16, and he went, "Yo, bro, cool." And I went, "Right, can you?" Like, I was having a serious conversation, and I said, "I'm actually trying to talk about something serious." And then when I respond in the same way, they're like, "I accidentally put K instead of OK yesterday," and he said, "That's a bit dry, isn't it?" And I said, "I actually accidentally missed off the letter because but it's where the standards I don't know, because if we on the one hand let people arguably not wear uniform because they can express themselves, the other side of it is, well, everybody just goes around doing potentially what they want, and that then becomes a world of who's doing what.
Well, I'm quickly going to throw this in as well. What was really interesting about the whole situation, also, I think one of the things that probably lots of people complained about was the time and the communication of it. Doing it right at the end of term when people had already started buying uniform was stupid, right? Because ultimately people had already spent out their money for the next year. So,
and potentially, I know this is getting really picky, but maybe you'd already taken labels out and labelled it up, and actually there was no way they could return the stuff.
Exactly. And when we're in a cost of living crisis, I think that's a bit irresponsible, therefore, to do it at that kind of time. But also, the other thing that they didn't seem to be taking into consideration, and I think this is really relevant, is there didn't seem to be any communication in terms of where they sat with this in terms of the next school, because they're a feeder school to the main school in where we live. So the majority of the children from that school will end up being at the upper school where we live. And at the same time that they were deciding that maybe it's a good idea to go down this really informal looking route or whatever, the upper school have decided, and their communication on this was a good 6 months beforehand and whatever else, their new uniform is actually getting smarter.
Okay.
Right. So they are going more formal. They have come out against the length of skirt. Skirts have got to be longer. Blazers have got to be, look like this, etc., etc. There will be wearing of ties, etc. So what you've then created by a lack of sort of joined upness there between the two is you would, if that had happened, you would have then had a lot of children that would then have gone from wearing very, very casual clothes to wearing very, very smart clothes, and that would have been more difficult again from a transitional point of view. And these things have to be looked at.
The problem is we live in such a strange, it is a strange world now, isn't it? Where, like I said, on the one hand, people can do what they want, but then arguably, I know with what happened at the beginning of the week, which was terrible, that I've seen quite a few people sort of discussing this, that if people think that they can justify things because they're allowed to have their opinion about this or whatever, it all just potentially, everything just leads into, if people are going to have freedom of speech, which is what people think they should have, which could be wearing what you want or whatever, the other side of that, the problem we've got is that arguably I should be able to go out in the street at night wearing nothing, whatever I want, whatever. But we don't live in a world. I'm going to make the decision that actually that's probably not, I'm not saying it's right, but that we live in a world full of lots of different people. And, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think, you know, the reason, and this is where you sometimes have to read between the lines of a lot of these things. I wonder what the real reason is behind the change, Graham. I bet it's probably not that. I think it's probably one of two things. Probably the fact that loads of property gets lost when the kids change, and maybe the hassle of the teachers or the teaching assistants having to manage all those children changing in and changing out. It may be other issues, but it's been badged up as something else. So again, it like you say, a lot of it comes down to communication. Communicate the actual reasons. Don't try and hide behind it and put something else up front and center, which is what it feels. Yeah, which you can apply to so many different things. You know, and you can apply it to the workplace. You can apply it to ergonomics, all that sort of thing. Trying to get somewhere without being open and honest causes a lot of problems. Actually explain. It's a broad church of reasons, but not explaining it just creates uncertainty and questions and thoughts,
and that's important because
I used to do supervision in the workplace, and whenever I used to communicate back what the employees had said, because I'd write it all up, and then I said in there, these are what they said that they're happy with, what they're not, what they can do. I said, but you need to act on this in some way, even if it is that you say we can't have this because we haven't got the funding, and if we give it from this, then they understand. They're just going to think you're a bunch of, you know, because you've not said. Simple as that.
By the way, we're 17 minutes in and we haven't actually asked Marianne to introduce herself formally. So for anybody that's listening, that's like, who is this person that they've got on? They haven't even bothered to introduce her.
To change from being to the gym.
Let's just do that quickly. So just quickly tell people who you are and what it is that you do, very briefly, and then we can go back to the conversation.
Well, I do what it says at the bottom.
But people are listening, so they can't.
Yes, that's very true. So I'm Marianne. I run 2M training, and I basically help you fall in love with training, I teach people how to teach, to train, to educate, to coach, to mentor, and more than anything, to communicate better with people.
Well, yeah. Which is why we started off on the communication line of things.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting. I do think that does go over into what we see in terms of providing support and education into businesses with ergonomics, etc. as well. I think a lot of the time, why it doesn't work when people are trying to get people into doing things in a different way is because it's not just a case of, but as you know, not just a case of giving them the adjustments or providing them with another piece of kit or whatever. You have to communicate properly what you are trying to achieve, what you actually see as the problems, and work together in order to take people to a different place. That's the thing. I don't think sometimes people see it as as a journey with the person that they're trying to work with. They see it as either like, we can dictate this from above and hopefully it will happen, in which case you never take people with you properly because they go, well, I don't want to do that, etc. A bit like grumpy me with my survey from the school. But as you say, if the school, but if the school had gone, actually, these are the problems that we're having, right? Could we maybe, rather than to begin with a survey on the school uniform, if they'd have said, we're having problems with the amount of manpower we've got in terms of getting kids changed for different activities, what you might have had people suggesting other ideas. It might be that a lot of parents would say, oh, actually, we could get more involved in actually helping our children learn how to get changed or whatever. You could just be a different educational piece rather than necessarily people all going, what's going on? So
I think people I think your favorite word here, people do make assumptions, but we all do, because we all come at it from our own agenda. So sometimes I'll get some people come into my training, and I love the line, there's nothing you can't tell me about training that I don't know. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'm absolutely fine with that. I even asked them if they want to take the session, but the thing is, then my job then is to find out what they do and how I can educate them as to why they need what I'm doing. Because I'm not just going to stand there and tell people stuff. Because when I hear that as that comment, it's telling me an awful lot of where they're coming at and how I've then got to change. How not change it, because I probably wouldn't, but I can see where they're coming at. So they've been doing it a long time and they don't want me to bore them and tell them stuff they already know. That's fine. So I'm never going to do that anyway. So it's quite a nice gift people give me when they do that. But they make that people walk in with a lot of assumptions of, you think you know everything, don't you? And I've had that before, and I'm like, I'm not actually aware I've ever said that.
Well, actually, I think probably you would be completely the opposite of that. I think anybody that actually understands training properly would actually always be coming at it from, I'm always learning, not from the point of view of I know everything. It's actually people that have got the chip on their shoulder and go and actually think they know everything that have actually got the problem with training. Because I think as soon as any of us in life get to the point where we think we know it all, we have a massive problem. Do you not agree, Stephen?
I mean, it's a phrase you hear often. I used it with someone the other day. There was someone who, and I can't remember the situation, but I think we actually both said at the same time, every day is a school day. Almost tying back to what we said, is that there's always something that you can know or learn. In fact, I know it was to do with it. It was to do with a piece of software that we offer, and there was something that I hadn't realised that it did, but hadn't maybe asked the question. So it all, and almost, as I say, assuming that I knew it, had carried on, but actually, by discussing it, I learned something. And as you say, it's always good to keep having those conversations and keep it all fresh, because there will be something. No one knows 100% about everything. It's making sure you're working towards that 100%, realizing you probably never will get there.
Well, I mean, some people come into me sometime and they say, how do I do this? Can you tell me how I do that? So you're going to tell me how, and I go, no, I'm going to educate you with the knowledge and skills. You're then going to problem solve every day when you go and do what you're going to do. I can't do that. I can't do that for anyone. And I wonder if it's because that's the history of what people have had with training, is that, and that's why they go in with, Christ, you're going to bore me sort of thing. And I'm like, that's not how I see it at all.
Can I just come in on that? Because I think that's quite interesting. Do you think, I mean, I know you've got some great little examples around aims and objectives, which are, core principles of training, right? But do you think that actually that's kind of got twisted along the way by a lot of people that deliver training, and actually they are making bold statements. I'm not going to call them aims and objectives, but they're making bold statements about what people will get out of their training, which aren't actually possible. Right?
No,
So if someone says, by the end of this, when I finish training you, you will be successful at this, sometimes that can't possibly be the case, because the training itself couldn't, by the nature of the training, couldn't possibly determine that will be the outcome, right?
No, because you can have so what I tend to find with people is what they actually mean is, this is what I want to talk about, this is what I want to tell you. In actual fact, what happens is often people will do the micro teach, and although it's not realistic because it's 15 minutes, it tells quite a story, because what it actually says is that when they get to the end of it, I say to them, how did it go? And they'll say, oh, well, and then I'll say to them, no, look at why did it go over on time? And they know exactly why. And I said, and they go, because I've tried to put too much in it. I said, totally. I said, whereas actually you can make you can teach something in 15 minutes, you just can't teach all this much, when actually in reality it was only this much. So if right from the beginning you've looked and you've said, what your objective is, it will be this, then that is what you're selling to somebody, and that is what they're buying from you, and that is what they should get from the end of it. And if they don't, arguably somebody shouldn't be paying me then, because they're not getting what they paid for. So often that is what people will say, is this is what you're going to get from that. But equally, within there, they've got no way of measuring whether somebody has. What they've said is, I'm going to tell you it. Well, telling somebody something doesn't mean to say they've learned it.
Yeah. Can I just say something quickly, and I'll let Stephen pick up on this, because he'll probably find this quite interesting. So I walked in on a session that Marianne was doing, where she was teaching a load of burly blokes how to do a micro teach. And it was really quite interesting, because she was actually using an example which is around changing a nappy.
Okay.
But she was showing this on the screen. It wasn't her demonstrating that live, because that would be, a sort of breach.
In my life.
Well, and also it'd be a bit worrying to know that a baby was on an industrial estate. I mean, it's bum check anyway. But it was really interesting, because she then asked them to think about, what was being missed in terms of information. And it was quite interesting to hear some of the answers, because again, the assumptions bit kicked in. A lot of them said, well, actually, yeah, she was saying that really well and whatever. And then actually, if you go back to listen to it again and looked at it again, she didn't. She missed out huge bits of information that were really, really vital. And it's interesting, because again, it's very easy for some people who have got knowledge to then fill in gaps, but think that other people in a group who have perhaps never had knowledge of how to do that wouldn't know from that session, because actually they've never had practical experience of it. Right? So I think sometimes we can assume that things are being taught particularly well, or trained in particularly well, because maybe we're bringing some experience of that, what is being taught, to it ourselves. But actually, the training is pretty poor.
Well, that session I pull apart quite a lot, purposely. I mean, people said I'm harsh. I said, well, I do it for obvious reasons. But interestingly, people either say, oh, come on, you're being too hard, or I don't think that's quite right. And I said, but I'm trying to teach you to do it in the best way that you possibly can. What's the point in me saying, or missing this out or that out? And I said, when she chose to change a nappy using teddies, they said, but she might not have been able to get any dolls. I said, it doesn't matter. When you're training, you have to go as close as you can to the thing that you're going to use.
Yeah, she didn't even choose to use a doll that looked like a baby. She used teddies, which are anatomically nothing like a baby. Do you know what I mean?
Saying, oh well, the tail you wouldn't have a tail on your baby and your baby wouldn't have hair. So then my point being, and people laugh and say we're being petty, and I said, well, actually, no, I'm not really, because if somebody was training you on a piece of equipment and they were hitting it, or because she kept pressing down on it, if they were hitting on it, leaning on it, if I was training people how to use a hoist, I won't swing on it and start kicking it. That's, you know what I mean, though? But I wouldn't say, well, actually, I'm going to use this hoist to train you. Actually, you're not going to use this one. It's similar. Before you know it, people are going to check out. And it really
let's take that to an example from your end, Stephen. That's a bit like, I mean, how important is it for you, for example, if one of your dealers is going in to see someone, if they've actually physically got samples from you and can show someone how to do it, right? That's so much better than saying, well, yeah, so a monitor arm, right? So it's a bit like, here, I'll give you an idea. I get some reams of paper. If I put reams of paper on the desk and I kind of twizzle them like that, and I put your monitor on the top and I do this, that's kind of what a monitor arm does, right? Doesn't teach it in the same way as showing them a monitor arm.
No. And I think a really good, and I was just sort of thinking there's something to tie it in with, and we did a show previously with Oliver Jones from Back Air Solutions where we were talking about an event we were doing, and that was sort of before the event took place. But what was really interesting was what we did that day, and Andrew Shepherd from Flot was involved. We were showcasing product to assessors, so people who were going in and assessing people in the workplace. And probably a bit of a sort of a hangover still from COVID is the number of people saying we haven't seen. Someone said, I've never seen that product in the flesh. I've only seen it on a website. So it was great for us to go a little bit back. And this ties in with what we were saying there, to go back to basics and actually touch and feel product and understand how it feels to work and set it up, and not going, yeah, but it's sort of like this, or go and check out that web page, or go and look at that link. Actually, this is the product.
If you're a kinesthetic person and you've got to, I'm just writing a course at the moment, and on there we look at different types of learners. And I say learners, but that's people, because we're learning all the time. So that's why we were talking about this earlier, that actually, although what I do is for teaching, it actually is about it's being a manager, it's being a whatever it is. That when we learn, very few people are just specifically one. So very few people just prefer to just read or do or whatever. Many people actually need all of it. I know that I'm a type 2 type Bark, which is I need to see something, I need to hear it, I need to read about it, but I need to have a go. And then I probably go back and do all those things again so that it makes sense. And I think knowing all of those things, whether it's a manager then saying that you can't have that equipment, they need to understand why you need it, because actually you might as well just chuck your money away on that training. Or as you said, if people can't actually, the passion somebody will have about something that they've seen that they liked will be vastly different than it will if they've just seen it on a screen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the whole sort of key behind what we were doing was to re-engage people with product and understand what it touches and feels. A lot of the things, a lot of the products we do with the equipment is tactile. We're passing it around. People were, silly example, people were using the keyboard, but imagining what it was like for them to type. And it was like, oh, that's nice. I like that. And do you know what I mean? That was simply by putting a product in front of someone and someone mimicking how they would work, brought that sort of passion and understanding, and they could relate it to the activity they would do, and therefore would have the knowledge that when they go out and talk to people, they can share a real life experience of what that product actually does. Not, well, it's got all these blurb lines on the internet and it does this and this. Actually, we've got an experience of using it, and it makes such a difference.
Well, I know going to Flot, go into the showroom, that I had a newfound sort of appreciation for that when I sat on one of the chairs and Graham was saying to me what it does, and I then went straight home and looked up getting one.
Yeah. You immediately, when I showed you that chair, said that doesn't look comfortable. I said, I said, yeah, and I just said try it. And I said, try it. Let me show you how it works, etc. And you were like, oh, and that's key, isn't it?
Yeah.
There we go. Folks, we're out of time for today. But there you go. If you are watching and you want to comment on what it's like looking after the kids during the school holidays, trying to work from home, if you've got an opinion on school uniforms, or you are interested in ergonomics or even training, and you'd want to, perhaps you run a business where you're delivering ergonomic training, etc., and you want to speak to Marianne about improving the training of your trainers so that you can educate more effectively your clients and take them on the journey with you, then do get in touch with her. We'll be back next week with more of the same. Until then, thanks to Marianne, thanks to Stephen. We'll see you soon.